Michael, it is brilliant to have you here today. I've been wanting to chat to you ever since we connected briefly on Christina's book camp earlier this month. So it's really, really cool to finally get the chance to connect with you today.
Thanks for having me on. Yeah, I'm looking forward to it, and I've been enjoying your energy and yeah, just your smile even too. It's like it looks like you're having fun doing this.
Thanks, Michael. And listeners, when you listen to this later, Michael and I had a great conversation about 2 seconds ago about football, and I'm pretty sure we could have carried that on for the whole podcast, but we'll try and focus
That's the
on
next thing is the
the next
Substack
thing. Yeah.
football podcast.
That's gonna be the spin-off from this one. But yeah, Michael, we'll just jump straight into it. Can you tell me a little bit about your background? So, how did you kind of come to be where you are now? Just tell our listeners what's currently happening with you in your life in terms of writing and in terms of your work and your home life as well. And just give us some context for where you're at right now.
Sure. Yeah. So I started writing maybe I think it's 7 or 8 years ago. And I had started like I grew up stuttering and really shy, and I took a sales job at 23 to kind of like as a way to push myself into the world and just to get beat up. Like I was like, if I like in 6 months, 3 months, like I'll learn something about me and I didn't expect to do well at it. And I learned pretty quickly that being kind of the introverted, shy, quiet one in a group of more alpha types, extroverted types, had its
Mm.
benefits. And I wasn't for everyone, but like a lot of my clients were like, oh, wow, like it's nice that you're not like the other ones.
Yeah.
Like, and a couple things opened my eyes to the strengths I had that I had buried underneath my self-talk of like, I'm weak, I'm not going to amount to anything. And then I took my confidence, went to Central America, lost all my money in a real estate deal that went bad. Got drunk
Well,
and other things for 2 years in Pennsylvania and bought a ticket 15, 14 years ago. I had $3,000 left. I bought a ticket to Barcelona, and something about being in a new place where no one knew me, it allowed me to just kind of get back to zero,
mm,
and I got in shape again. I lost weight and I started to teach English, business English stuff, and all of that kind of rolled into like I would get jobs by sending like copy to websites that were in Spanish that had bad English.
mm,
And I started kind of just to write that way, and and that led to getting jobs with startups, doing some mentorship with boot camps in Amsterdam. And when my wife and I had our first kid, I didn't know what to do because I couldn't go outside. Like it's not like here, like we don't play golf like in the United States where you leave for 5 hours, like on the Saturday. So I quit smoking also when I was home, like, and I started to write. And I very quickly realized that I should have been doing it all along. My best means of communication is writing,
mm,
and um, like it was one of those things where I was like in sales communication in front of people roles
mm.
for 15 years, and then I was like, well, maybe I should stay home a little bit, you know. Yeah, and that picked up pretty quickly. Like I got into Fast Company on my third article, that was shared by Inc. I left a comment on Stephen Pressfield's blog, and they asked me to elaborate on my comment for for a post on his website.
Wow.
And then I found Medium, and that carried on to getting a book deal, an agent, um,
Mm,
and I took a couple years off to help other clients write books so I could learn how to write my own.
mm,
And I just recently came back online 4 months ago on Substack,
mhm.
and it's been fun. Like I write about like it's been good. Like I'm glad I grew up without a smartphone and I didn't write for almost 40 years, just
Mm,
because now like my writing is more reflective in nature
mm.
and small stories from my life now and in the past. So I think that's kind of my superpower in a way is I have a lot of things to pull from.
Yep.
So that's where I am now, and now I'm just kind of back on Substack, trying not to promote my book anymore and just do the things. Like I think that my best book promotion is me just writing how I want to write, like getting back to where I
Yep.
was prior, like and having a CTA at the bottom, like if you enjoyed this, here's my book, but keeping it pretty minimal. Yeah.
Mm, yeah. Incredible. Michael, tell me more about the book. So it's Shy by Design, is that right?
Yeah. So it's Shy by Design. Like it's more my first mountain book.
Mm,
Um, and it's basically my two kids are shy and they stutter. And uh, that was a main motivating factor in my dad got cancer during COVID,
Mm,
and like I was kind of like I just started to kick around the book idea, and I was like, it felt pretty inconsequential in the grand scheme of things. I was kind of paralyzed on it.
mm,
Like, and my dad said something about like, hey, I'm gonna write a memoir, like my memoir for you and your brothers while I'm going through this, and I want you to keep at it.
mm,
So I kind of, I was making money just writing online, and like book meant pausing everything. But the motivation of my kids, dads, not getting any younger,
mm,
and uh, uh, like I teach leadership communication at a master's program here in Barcelona, and it's a lot of shy people, quiet,
mm,
confidence coaching, and this kind of stuff. So it felt like a good time just to kind of, it's almost my goodbye to that world because I want to move more towards storytelling, kids'
mm,
books, screenplays, like whatever, like
mm.
more creative side of writing and not the business side.
Okay, awesome. Um, and in terms of, I mean, you talked about not really wanting to promote your book directly on Substack. How is all that going in terms of uh, publicizing it? So how do you actually go about promoting it right now? If you don't want to talk about it directly, too much, how do you do it in a kind of like more subtle, kind of gentler way online?
So, but what I did, my first post on Substack, was sitting on the couch on Saturday at like 6 in the morning, and I just started to write kind of how I want to write now. Like instead of like right now, I'm doing a lot of assignments about like articles outside of Substack or Medium for the book, and it's the same topics.
Mm,
And I sat down and I got in kind of like a rhythm, like a beat of writing. Like, and I was like, I hate self-promoting. And it was at the point where it was like a month out of the book, and I was like, I need to amp this up. Like I felt the pressure. So I wrote a post, "The Joy of Writing for an Audience of None," where it's basically what I hate self-promoting a book that like indirectly promoted a book, you know?
yeah.
So I've been doing that, like, and then storytelling, like telling stories from the book is an easy kind of win. But generally, if I have an endorsement, like I got fortunate, our mutual friend Michael Simmons introduced me to Cal Newport, um,
Mm,
and he endorsed the book for me, which was a really big spark,
mm,
like in the promotion process. And how I would share that is the story of like Michael and I stayed in contact. I ran a mastermind group in Medium years ago, like 5, 6 years ago, and he was part of it. Like, and we kept in touch every 6 months.
mm,
And my book is how to keep a network going.
mm.
And that led to like I was complaining about getting endorsements, and he was like, "Well, I can contact Cal for you." And I was like, "Cal who?" And he was like, "Cal Newport." And I'm like, "What are you talking about?" He's like, "We grew." He's like my best friend from childhood. And I was, but like it was just keeping in contact with people,
Yeah.
and then telling that story is easier for me than going out like Cal Newport endorsed my book.
Yeah.
Like the story of me and Michael led to that. So it's more storytelling, talking
Mm,
about how much I hate the process has worked really well, and getting to know people. Like the podcast and interview thing, I was 3 months ago. I was terrible at it, like all over the place. Yeah, now I'm really enjoying it. So
mm.
it's like relationships, it's like anti-promotion
Yeah.
and telling stories.
y-
But it's
Yeah.
easy to get paralyzed in how do you do it well.
Yeah.
My book is about betting on your own strengths and what you do, and it's like I didn't listen to my own advice in the beginning, and I got paralyzed. I need to chest thump.
Mm,
And like the book is like I just need to do what I do to get the book deal, and that's like tell stories of people and what I've learned from them, and self-deprecating.
mm.
um so that's been fun. I don't know how well it's working. Like on Substack, the comments are really good. On each post I get something of someone, I just ordered your book and this kind of stuff.
Mm.
So it's been really nice. Like the community here is amazing.
It is, I agree. And yeah, we talked about that in Christina's book Come as well about notes and how to sort of craft like story style notes, and you're obviously excellent at it. I've been sort of looking more at your notes now recently, even just since that conversation, and kind of trying to glean what I can from what you've been saying as well. Um, what do you think is the like the how can people sort of take that approach and use that if they want to promote themselves as writers? Like how would you suggest they go about that in like that sort of like gentler way where it's more subtle and it's not like a direct kind of like buy my book or read my writing. What's the how do you like ease into that as a writer, would you say?
I think an easy way, what you do really well too is, and something I need to do more of, is sharing what other people are saying about the book.
Mm,
Like it's just like instead of me saying it's great, it's obviously like better if somebody else is saying it.
mm,
So I'd like to do like more screenshots of reviews and this kind of stuff. But it's finding your easy button. Like
mm,
what's the easiest way to start it? Yeah, and even if you're paralyzed in the process, like why not say that you're paralyzed to promote your book? I'm not good at self promotion is a new thing,
mm,
right? Like it's not something that we're born knowing how to self promote, and our new world demands it a lot of the time on video, like which isn't comfortable for a lot of people,
mm,
or writing about yourself. So I think it's kind of finding just that one way that you can start doing it. Um, like I
mm,
started with LinkedIn of just sharing endorsements, like in the story of how I knew the endorser. I shared stories of how I got rejected from endorsements,
mm.
and some of those rejections were really nice rejections, like, and that led to me sharing the rejection. So it's kind of like, for me, it's self-deprecating, or it's not looking like I know what I'm doing. Like, and I think that relates, especially Substack, because it's a lot of writers who don't want to do the self-promotion thing. I
Yeah,
think it's a really effective way, just because it's like like other people are like, oh, I see, like you see me, like this kind of thing. If I feel
yeah,
the same way, so I think being honest in it is just the key to just about anything.
yeah,
So if you're confident in promoting, like own it. But
yeah.
if you're confident in not promoting, own that too.
Mm. That's great advice. Because, and you're so right, you hit the nail on the head there. There's so many people on Substack who don't really want to promote their stuff and they're reluctant to do it. And I think sharing that like vulnerability about it and just being honest about the fact that you don't really want to do it, sort of brings down those walls, doesn't it? Because everybody then kind of, as you say, they feel seen, they can recognize what you're talking about, they understand the sentiment, and that connection then breeds, trust and loyalty and an interest in you as a writer, and then that naturally spills over into someone upgrading to like maybe a paid subscriber on your publication or buying your book or
Yeah.
just wanting to connect with you in some way. Yeah.
It's one of those things where like authenticity is used a lot now, especially like it's fun like with AI now too. I see it on LinkedIn a lot. Like build an authentic personal brand with AI is a thing where there's thought leaders that have hundreds of thousands of followers on it.
Yeah.
But and I'm 46. I think that helps in the sense that you you kind of reach a point, like, if you go to like a nudist beach or something, there's some like people in their 60s, 70s, they just don't care,
Yeah.
right? Like, and when you get a little bit older, like I'm going through that now of not caring, of just like, here's my is like, here's me,
Yeah.
like not take it or leave it, like not in a harsh way, but you
Mm.
are kind of like, you become more comfortable as the years pass with who you are and the things you stand for.
Yeah.
So I think it really helps just that, just being who you are. As soon as you can do that, like you'll attract the right people, and it may not be for everybody, but that's kind of the, like
Yeah.
if you go outside, somebody, like if you like just going outside of the house, people are judging you.
Yeah.
So it's trying to
Yeah.
come to grips with that judgment and not caring. Like it's like Nick Goki, a mutual writer friend too, had said something like he had edited an article, and at the end he was like, stop delaying being yourself. It's who you're going to be anyway. So what's
Mhm.
the point in delaying the inevitable? And I think it's really good advice, like just in general of,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, and the more authentic you are in the age of AI, the better as well, because people want to talk to real people now more than ever.
yeah,
I think even just since the pandemic as well, and we want that connection, we want that like direct contact, and we don't want to talk to robots. We don't want to talk to copy and pasted templates. We want to talk to real people who are sharing real experiences. I think.
yeah,
Um, yeah, I mean, it seems so simple in many ways, Michael.
yeah. I know,
Doesn't it? You know
right?
what I
But
mean?
it's
Like it
so
seems so
hard.
obvious, but
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 the self-talk is real. Like my internal dialogue is
yeah,
like 23 hours a day is awful.
yeah,
But just one time that
yeah,
I'm actually myself is when things go well. So it's kind of,
yeah,
but then
yeah,
you see those trails of, hey, that's like I did it my way there and it worked. I did it, like you see those times, like,
yeah,
and you start to see a trail that that
Yeah.
builds confidence on that.
Yeah.
But with AI, I think it's never been a better time to be good with people. Like
Yeah.
everyone's kind of scared of AI, and I'm just like, well, it's like in reality, it's like it should weed out some of
Mm.
the like the fraudulent types online. Yeah,
But the bad actors.
yeah,
Right. Um, yeah, and I find personally on Notes or whatever other platform that the more vulnerable you are, to an extent, obviously within reason, you don't want to share like maybe sometimes too much, that's maybe unnecessary, but the more vulnerable you are, the quicker people will connect with you, and those
yeah.
tend to be the stories in the post that do best. Like if I share something. I shared a post there about my appendix bursting whenever I was
Mhm.
11 on Christmas Eve. And it's not even like that remarkable a story in many ways. It just my appendix burst, big whoop. But it kind of led to me reading the first Harry Potter book, and then that led to my interest in wanting to be a writer.
Mm.
And it's a simple story, but it seemed to really hit a nerve with people in a positive sense, and seemed to really connect with it. And I think the more we can share that kind of stuff, like those personal stories that show we're just humans and we go through crap in our lives sometimes,
Yeah.
people can connect with that far better than they can connect with, here's how much money I made on Substack last year, or here's how big my audience is, or that sort of thing. Um, and I think you're very good, Michael, at sharing about your kids as well. Like we talked about in notes, how you've been able to share a few posts about your kids and how that connects with people in a real powerful sense as well. Um, can you share a little bit more about your actual notes process? So like, and again, you don't need to go too much into it because we talked about it in other areas as well. But if you sit down to write a note, is it literally just whatever kind of comes in your head at the time, and you just kind of spill your thoughts onto the screen, or do you have an actual kind of process for how you do it?
I have a really messy process, and it's funny. Like it's like with notes, I've never like I had some pictures on Instagram. I still do like I haven't used like I've used it once in 4 years or something, and I never like I like photography
Mm,
and I like designing stuff, and it's the first time. And LinkedIn feels a little too packaged and like it feels like you can't tinker as much with
mm,
personal stuff on LinkedIn. Maybe you can, but with kids and stuff, yeah, I'm not as comfortable there. And with notes, it's kind of like I was never really active on Twitter, but I've been observing these platforms for years.
mm,
So it's kind of like like it was my fun chance. It's like, oh, I can do pictures and I can do design and I can tell short stories
mm,
and get personal, not just professional stuff. And it really like I'm really enjoying it. But my process is like I'm a like a notebook and pen person,
mm,
and then I'll move stuff to a Google. Like I have a Google Doc of things that like essentially things that make me stop.
mm.
So like whether it's kids, wife, parents said something like, and this is going back like not just in the moment, but
Yeah.
going back years of like things that pop into my head. It's the only thing I'm really good at in terms of what's not really organized. If I did a screenshot, you'd be like, oh my God, how do you do anything? But I have all these things like, and they usually connect with something else.
Yeah.
So if I have a story, what's the non-obvious takeaway? Sometimes it's good just to state like the obvious takeaway, like people are good,
Mm,
or but yeah, I usually have some kind of like I'll link together the notes I have in these documents, like, and I'll get a spark
mm,
somewhere. So I'll have something happen during the day that reminds me of X,
mm,
or like if I'm kind of stuck on something, I'll just read through all of like I'll just scroll until I find one where I get excited about it.
mm.
And I'll tell that most of the stuff I write is rarely in the moment.
Yeah.
Like it's something that happened 6 months ago. So when writing it, you get kind of this cool, like with telling stories, you can get a little bit more visual of how you see it in your head
Mm,
as opposed to the reality of it. Like it may have been like a boring interaction, but 6 months removed, like if there's one sentence that impacted you,
mm,
you craft it around, like you can get like creative freedom with what you have in your head. And
mm.
maybe the person who was next to me remembers it completely differently, but it's kind of by letting stuff sit for a while,
Yeah.
the imagery helps. Yeah, and I try to write in that way where you can kind of see
Yeah. It
what's
kind of it
happening.
kind of crystallizes over time, sort of.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So it's one of those things. I don't have like a content calendar.
Mm,
Today I just like I'm gonna write one. I have a spark of Chris Christopherson died,
mm,
and he helps kickstart the career of John Prime, who's my favorite singer songwriter.
mm,
So it's like something happened in the world where I was like, oh, like I have a great story of John Prime and Chris Christopherson.
mhm,
But generally, it's more like looking back through stuff and thinking of an old boss said something. My
mm,
dad said something. It's generally what other people are saying.
mhm.
And I always try and do, like my book too, it's not a good to great, it's bad to not awful. So it's finding those things I was bad at. Like
Yeah,
some piece of advice that helped me means I was struggling with something.
yeah,
So I have a lot of notes like that. Like, and of course, my biggest note that has like 1,800 likes is just a quote from like an Instagram thing I liked. You know what I mean? It's kind of like, man, I have these personal stories, and they'll get like 100 or 200 or sometimes 300 likes on it,
mm,
and those get a lot more subscribers. Like if I like look at the daily ups
mhm,
than a quote from someone else.
yeah,
But yeah, it's kind of heartbreaking. When
yeah,
you're like, I thought that one was really good, and it's like some sentence that I connected with. But yeah, it's funny.
yeah. I find that too, actually. Just again, you hit the nail on the head with that too about how the notes that those like quotes from other people get a lot of likes and a lot of shares and stuff like that. But it's the ones that are kind of the personal stories that translate
Yeah,
more into subscribers for your
yeah,
publication. I've definitely found that as well. Like I went through a phase the last couple of months, kind of an experimental phase with notes where I was sharing a lot of like stuff at the same time every day, like different kinds of notes. So like an image note or a quote note or like a question, like an engaging question, that sort of thing,
yeah,
just to see how it would work and what the impact would be in terms of my subscriber growth or my connections. Excuse me. And I found that recently when I kind of stopped doing that, and I've just been sharing what comes into my head in the moment,
yeah,
slightly edited and stuff like that, but pretty much just straight onto the page. Those are the notes that directly seem to result in more subscribers coming into my
yeah. It's
publication.
like popularity doesn't mean
Yeah.
like yeah, like someone's really engaged with your work. I see a lot of the yellow highlighting the agree question.
Hmm.
Some people are even now like screenshotting LinkedIn or Twitter, like influencer quotes.
Yeah.
Like, and I think it's more of a thing just to keep like not a selfish thing, but it's the consistency thing of like, oh, I don't have something today. Like I need to fill. Like
Yeah.
it's almost like you're creating a calendar
Yeah.
instead of just coming off the cut. Yeah, just like more personal stuff. Like,
Hmm.
and I get that. Like like it works.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I always get more excited when it's something like if it's a quote, it could be Tony Robbins or from my 6-year-old. Like my 6-year-old is gonna win. Like, it's kind of like plus it's like I have to listen each day. I have to know like my whole job is to notice stuff,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah. I think just as we're talking about this sort of stuff on like Twitter and stuff like that the last few years, it feels like writing has been sort of there's been like a science to it.
Yeah,
It's been made mechanical. It's been made like numerical rather than based more on literature, based more on actual words. And people are trying to create formulas on how to do stuff, and then everyone uses the formulas and everyone sounds exactly the same.
yeah,
To the stage now where someone puts up a tweet and then the next 10 tweets are basically variations of that first tweet, like either put in a chat GPT or someone's just written something, but it just sounds exactly the same as what the
yeah,
first person said. And it's like soulless writing. There's like nothing to it anymore. And it just creates this almost like void of emotion, and I hate that personally. I hate that Twitter's become that, and I
yeah.
like that Notes on the flip side has become this like breeding ground of positivity and actual creativity and connection with people. Do you kind of find that too?
Yeah, I haven't been looking at the algorithm just because I started back after writing books and I was with clients also and I was just like I'm just gonna have fun. Like I don't really like it's kind of irrelevant. Like if like I'm starting like I started at 0 followers. Like
Yeah.
so the pressure was kind of off. But what I see like and I see some shifts. And Tom Kugler had said something about how like you're kind of getting capped at like 100 likes right now or something. It isn't as like the growth explosion isn't as big.
Mm,
And I like that for the fact that like with LinkedIn and Twitter, like, you get huge accounts and they always get huge engagement.
Mm,
And it's kind of like that's good for them, but it's not good for the platform.
mm,
And Justin Welsh has this genius thing where he's like, if you want to grow on LinkedIn, be the first to comment on my posts.
yeah.
And it creates this competition.
Yeah.
And he's very smart at what he does, and he's extremely good at what he
Mm,
does. But long term, like LinkedIn is getting the same feeling like you have with Twitter from last year. Like I start like with Twitter's like I view LinkedIn as the same trajectory as Twitter. I don't think it's going to be as relevant or as like it will be because there's not another straight professional platform.
yeah.
But yeah, it's not like I'm a LinkedIn influencer. In 2 years, will that be the equivalent of Tony Robbins or a used car salesman? Like it's really hard to see.
How's it gonna go?
Yeah, just
Mm,
because what does well there is not what people like. Yeah, I don't know. Like it's a very complicated thing, but
mm,
with notes, like it feels like it is more like the playing ground's leveled.
yeah.
Like 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 anybody can kind of pop.
Mm,
And it's not all the same huge names getting massive engagement. So I kind of like that they're hindering
mm,
the reach of notes right now.
yeah.
Like I'd like to grow faster, obviously, like, but at the same time, long term, I think they're really working to create an ecosystem that's not what the other platforms are like.
Yeah.
Like it seems like that. And then I think Tom and Michael had interviewed one of the co-founder, is it
Hamish, was it?
Harnish?
Yeah.
Yeah, and he had like made something about like there's two identical cars, but how we design the inside of our car like is going
Mm,
to be a different model.
yeah.
And I think is like I think they're really trying to do that.
Yeah.
Um,
And I hope
so
that
we'll see.
continues as well because I hope they don't kind of just lapse into being at the other platforms eventually. I mean, they might further down the line, but right now, Substack is just a really cool platform to be on for writers,
Yeah.
in that sense.
Are you doing it like are you seeing any of the double like with Twitter like it's like oh half the world is asleep at midnight and half's awake at noon, so I'm gonna post twice the same thing.
Yeah.
I've seen that a little bit recently
Yeah.
with just the same note but noted 4 hours later. And
Yeah.
I was like, oh man, don't yeah, like marketers kill everything, right? Like it's just the nature of the beast. It's their job to like take something until like and kill it.
Yeah.
Like if it works, kill it, then move on. So I'm
Mm.
hoping that kind of stuff kind of gets like I don't know if there's something in that can detect repetitive content,
Yes.
but
Yeah.
just yeah, in LinkedIn, there's some people like friends who like their content is a 30-day rotation. It's the same thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like
I seen that.
and it works every time. And
Yeah,
it's
I seen that too on Twitter. Same thing. Like people, I've seen posts from people from years ago that they just reposted again, and then it's in a cycle, as you say.
I
And
think Substack won't stand for that though.
no,
Like
I hope it
readers
doesn't.
won't. Yeah,
Yeah.
because it's readers. Like you don't have to have the massive hooks. Like some of my stronger like notes don't have a crazy hook in the beginning. It's just more here's what was going on.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like and that's nice. Like you don't have to always like how can I hook these people? It's not
Yeah.
yeah, or like a it's like the clickbait titles on Medium a couple of years ago, like that was the hook, and now it's the first sentence hook,
Yeah.
and it's just kind of exhausting. Of like, do I
Yeah.
really have to play that game? Yeah,
Yeah. And it is so formulaic, and you kind of know what's happening whenever you read a post or an article title sometimes, and you're like, I know what this is going to be, because I've seen this played out before multiple
yeah,
times for different
yeah,
people. The one thing that I do to just give notes an extra boost is just to restack it a few hours later. So it's the same note and it's just restacked maybe like 5 or 6 hours after I originally
yeah,
posted it. Because my audience are so spread between the US and Europe and everywhere else, it just means that they get more of a chance to see it. But it's not duplicating the note. And like
No, I see the duplicate, like the difference of something. Like it's like I saw it as and maybe it's my Substack the app because sometimes you scroll and it just starts at the beginning again.
yeah,
I don't know. So maybe I'm wrong with that. But I do think that like if you write something like storytelling is the future, most people suck at it.
mm,
Like the typical like LinkedIn or Twitter thing is like here's how to not suck at it. Like I don't think that would play as what that would go over as well with Substack readers.
no, I don't think so. I think the audience is it's just a different kind of audience, different kind of clientele you're writing to
Yeah.
on Substack. It's not that they're better, it's just that they are they're generally all writers or
Yeah,
readers,
it's a different kind
whereas
of reader. Yeah, it's a
yeah,
different kind of reader writer.
whereas LinkedIn and Twitter is more kind of, I would say it's kind of more people who are like aspiring business people or solopreneurs or entrepreneurs, and maybe writing's mixed in with that. But it's usually to do with money, like money Twitter, like you mentioned. Like most of
Yeah,
that is, how do we make money? How do we create a mechanic process around writing that leads to money? It's not writing for the sake of writing, for the
for
joy
the
of it.
craft.
It's
Yeah,
how do we craft it into making money, into a machine, which is painful.
yeah,
But
yeah, yeah. It's a recipe for burnout, I think, and it's
I
kind of
think
a
so.
short-term play. Yeah.
Yeah. And Michael, I just want to quickly go back to something you mentioned before. You talked about wanting to write more books, like children's books and stuff. Where do you kind of see yourself going in the next few years in terms of all that? What's your plan?
I like everything new, like, and that's probably why I'm struggling with book promotion is because it is like it's a long process. It's like I went with a traditional publisher,
Mm,
and it's like you have to wait, like, and then it's like, all right, like reshuffle stuff from the book, old articles for the promotion of it, like, and I like it does not excite me. Um, so I'm very much someone who has to follow my energy, curiosity. I have a bunch of kids book, like I wrote kind of intros of animal stuff for business themes back
mm,
in the day, or self-help topics, but through the lens of animals and like just with one takeaway at the end. And I have those.
mm,
And I have a buddy in London, Steve QJ, who's on Substack, like, and
mm,
he writes like about culture, racism, like, and he sent me a like a book he had, like a kid's book idea he has, and it's incredible. And he's like, well, let's work on it together, like see if you can help me to get it moving.
mm,
Um, like, and a friend writes screenplays in Los Angeles. He's like, I can't pay you because we're not getting paid much right now anyway. But if you want to shadow
mm,
my process with it, throwing ideas, that gets me excited. So it's just kind of moving on. I've done the businessy writing, the listicles, the long personal stories, the short personal stories, books.
mm,
Like, and now it's like I get more excited of other people's stories. Like
mm.
that's a lot of my work now is like as a coach is with storytelling stuff, and just different mediums of stories. I have kids. I make up stories in bed. Like they can help me write it. Like like that sounds fun to me.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think my future is more col collaboration. I don't know if it's cohorts yet, like small
Mm,
cohorts or partnering with somebody. Um, but yeah, like more people and new and more creative, not business,
mm.
which is probably financially a horrible. It's like I write a book, I'm doing well, and then
Yeah.
my inclination is to blow it all up.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Fair enough.
yeah,
Yeah, no,
yeah,
I'm the same in that sense, just in terms of writing. Like I've obviously that's my first book there on the
yeah.
shelf behind me, and I'm about a chapter away from finishing the sequel to it. I'm just writing it at the minute, and then I'm self-publishing or published under my own indie press name my first adult horror novel in November. So that's kind of the next thing I'm
Wow.
doing. Yes, it's a big swing, but I love that process, and I think more and more. I'm thinking of myself more as an author who also writes online because I just the buzz I get from writing fiction is just it's the thing that really drives me more than anything else.
Yeah, it feeds you more than yeah.
Yeah, and I come away from sometimes writing like the difference between writing an article that I think is great versus like a scene in a chapter that I think is great in terms of what it does for me is so massively different.
The
Like
buzz, yeah.
yeah, I come away from it writing a bit of fiction and just be like buzzing. I can't wait to get back to it. Whereas writing an article, you're like, oh yeah, that's great, and it's probably going to do okay. I'm happy with that, but I'll move on to the next one. You know what I mean? There's such a difference in your
Yeah,
brain.
I love that you're doing these different things. Like that's the key, I think, to kind of the longevity of it all is figuring out a way to make like a living doing it while scratching your own itch.
Yeah,
And maybe like your own itch becomes the thing over time that can financially support you.
yeah, yeah.
But it's like it's cool to see you doing all this stuff. Like I want to get into fiction, and I spend a lot of time like with clients too. It's like my job is to become them, all
Yeah.
right? Like as fast as possible, like in terms of the voice, the style, and I think growing up like stuttering helped with that because I wanted people to like me. So I would always like I wouldn't talk. I would just watch and observe and
Mm,
like what would I have done there?
mm,
What did they do? So I've always been kind of like in other people's heads or shoes, and looking at fiction is kind of just like with animals. I think is my easy button, just because it's like trade me for a dolphin, like you know what I mean, like or my wife for like boss for a snake, you
yeah.
know, like it's kind of my easy way to ease into that and write a 500 for kids book, 500-600 words max, you know.
Hmm.
But then you can always take that story and turn it into a 5,000 word thing
Hmm.
and build up from it. So I love like in the future, I'd love to pick your brain about fiction, and I have a feeling I'd be really good. Like there's a client looks for new hires through the lens of a starter, developer, and finisher.
Hmm.
Someone who's good at the blank page. Like this is for design and architecture. So somebody who could get something down, like even if it's shit. I'm really bad at that. Like I need my documents for inspiration. There's some people who can just go.
Yeah.
I'm really good at developing. So it's kind of like whenever I work on something new, I'm usually shadowing someone
Mm,
to see how they're doing it. Like, and then I'm like, oh, you can change that.
yeah.
So I need to figure out, like, maybe it's writing fiction with someone else who is a starter and more creative in the sense of like imagining a world fast.
Mm,
But then, yeah, like helping them develop the dialogue, the
mm,
challenges, like that kind of stuff would be,
yeah.
yeah, just the art of writing. Yeah, like different kinds of writing.
I can see you doing that for sure. Yeah, I
You,
mean, like, I think I'm kind of the person who does just kind of blaze on and just gets the stuff done, but then could probably do with somebody to kind of temper it a little bit and say, well, hang on a minute, what about this? You know, like this scene or this bit of dialogue, or where's this storyline actually going to go eventually? Because I'm very much a pantser, so I'll just write. I don't necessarily have an exact plan for what's going to happen. Before I start a scene, I'll just sit down and say, right, roughly this is how it's going to go, but the characters are going to drive it. They're the ones who are going to determine what happens. When I'm writing dialogue, it's just happening. It's not like
yeah.
this is what they're going to say. It's just like these two characters are talking to each other, and I'm just kind of mediating between it. And just kind of seeing how it goes. So
So it's funny how the human brain works now.
yeah,
Like it just like your finger, like the connection of brain to fingers is
yeah,
incredible. But
yeah.
too, if you're getting in your reps now, it's hard to think that like your books are going to be worse in the future. You know what I mean? Like it's
Yeah, yeah. It's practice makes perfect,
yeah.
or makes slightly better. But yeah, like it's such a fun process, and like even you mentioned screenplays as well. Like that's kind of I think a soft dream of mine is to see some stuff that I write someday get turned into a TV show or a movie or
Yeah.
something like that. Like I think my fantasy stuff definitely has potential further down the line to be turned into something. Like I plan to write, like 7 of these books in a series or around that
Wow.
anyway, if I can, because I kind of have like when I started to write it, I was like, oh, this is just a fun little story I'll write during the pandemic just to kind of fill the time, because I love to give it a go. And the more I write of it, the more I can see how
Where
these
it's
characters
going.
are, yeah, how they're
Yeah.
fleshing out and where they're going to go and that sort of thing. And there's a bigger story in there, like underneath everything that's kind of
Oh.
coming out. And the same with like
It's
my, yeah, go ahead.
it's so cool. Like I see the George Martin behind you too, and it's almost like talking to a younger version of that. Like I've always been like, how do they do that? You know what I mean? Like, and it is like it's like I do think it is kind of a gift. Like it's something, but at the same point, if you have a kickoff, like I
Yeah,
need a kickoff, like, and then I can run with it. And
yeah,
it's what is like, is that possible for me? It's like I didn't think I could help people on books. Like now I can look at a paragraph on page 218 and be like, that needs to go on page 37.
mm,
Look, and my brain like is like I always thought I was like a 900 words max writer
mm,
until I helped on books, and then I wrote my own.
mm,
So it's like, and you learn how to chunk stuff down and
yeah,
transition. So
yeah.
it's amazing that, yeah, to think that that kind of thing is possible. But man, yeah, it's like I like brains like yours that just do that kind of stuff.
Oh man, I wish it was slightly more structured than it is, but it's just the way it goes. And yeah, I mean you mentioned George R. R. Martin. I actually met him a few years ago just at an event he did here in Northern Ireland.
Wow.
Because obviously Game of Thrones is filmed here, so he came over and he did this event, and we got to like meet him in the end and shake his hand and stuff, which is really cool. And I hope he finishes those books someday. But yeah, it's a messy process, but it's fun and it's what kind of gives me energy, and it's what makes me love writing. And I think if I just wrote articles all the time and I just wrote in Substack all the time, and I love that, but I think if I just did that, I would kind of burn out eventually and I would lose my
Yeah.
my desire for it. And I think fiction is what I've always loved to do, so I love coming back to that and finding a way
Personally,
to
I
do
think
it.
it kind of what stamps me as some like of wanting to follow you. Like wasn't the growth like it's the combination of the two things. Like
Yeah.
so if it's just growth advice or like writing grow your business advice,
Mm.
but then you're actually like you're doing a different kind of writing.
Yeah.
Like there's a lot of people on like LinkedIn or Twitter who are really good with storytelling tips,
Mm.
but they don't publish stories.
Mm.
So it's kind of like yes, it's good like and learn from the teaching, not the teacher kind of thing. Like if you see something good, like you should keep it, no
Yeah.
matter if they're doing it or like you don't have to be Kobe Bryant
Mm.
to be a good teacher of basketball. You know what I mean? Like sometimes it helps if it's like someone who's really really short who's just a massive fan.
Yeah.
But with you, it was the and like he does this and he does that. Like it's like oh that's really interesting. Uh,
Yeah. Yeah. I get the feeling, Michael, we're gonna collaborate and stuff in future. I get that vibe.
get the like like I'd like to look at your books now. Like I'm curious now because I like ripping it's like I write about finding the good thing in the day because my brain is always like there's a problem. You
Yeah.
know? Like my work is generally it's problem identification and trying to solve it with somebody who like with books or speeches, whatever it is, or branding. Um, so it'd be fun to like look at like, and I think what's interesting too is I did some branding project, like a guy I wrote a book with, Irreplaceable, like which is the book I want to be buried with. Um, he does real world design for mom and pop shops, for Harley Davidson, for football teams, to bring people together in the real world.
Mm.
So he like pro social architecture, like he's like he views architecture as a social act and not just like mansions in Aspen.
Mm.
And I did some branding projects with his company, and what really is like the beginner's eye. Like I didn't know what I was doing in terms of the design stuff,
Mm.
but he'll ask me design questions of what I is like, and I'll spot things that his team won't see just because I don't know what I'm doing. And it's actually a really big like he pays me for that.
Mm.
Like it's kind of like, hey, I'm a fan of this thing, but I have no idea how it works. But this part of it I think is wrong.
Mm.
Yeah, and it's interesting how the beginner, like how valuable that can be with
Yeah.
people. I think a lot of people like hold themselves back, like I don't know enough like about that or editing or book writing to
Mm.
offer good feedback. But it's amazing what like the best feedback for my book at test readers was from people who aren't avid writers.
Mm.
It's like it was the readers. So
Yeah.
it's really interesting. I'd love to look at like the fiction and just be like, yeah, just be a jerk.
I'll let you read the draft of the next novel and see what you think, and you can give me some feedback on it if you want.
I'd
Um,
love the terror one. Yeah, the
yeah,
horror one struck my. Yeah, it's like I'd love to read that. Like not even to tear it apart, like just because it's like I like that. Yeah,
I'll send you a copy of it
that
after this. You
lane.
can read
Cool.
it. Um, but yeah, and I think it's really important to have fresh eyes on stuff because yeah, you can see as a writer you can see the same mistake like 5 times and not see it as a mistake, and then someone else comes along and reads it the first time and is like, here's why it's a mistake and it's so
Yeah,
obvious.
yeah.
You know what I mean?
Like a really small thing with like notes and stuff is I'll do like my wife will read stuff to herself first, like, and I'll see her body language, like, do her eyes widen, like,
Mm.
does she laugh, like, when she should, like, and then I'll have her read it out loud, like, and I look a lot for like last week I did a workshop with Tom and Michael Simmons group, like, and there was a sentence about that, like, we had something of like, and in the bleachers, like everyone in the bleachers was in tears.
Mm.
And someone had suggested like a word instead of tears, but like the flow, like it's like I'll look at, do words go up at the end or do they go down?
Mm.
So like tears is kind of a down sound.
Yeah.
So it's like if this is the last sentence in your note, like you kind of want it going up.
Yeah.
Does that make any sense at all? Like I'll
Yeah.
look at
Yeah.
rhythm like that, like of sentence rhythm. So it's like the big thing of like the paragraphs of like, is this in like the
Yeah.
right place? And beginners are good at that of like, I don't understand why you transition from here to here. Like, and then you have the people who are good at like the line edit
Yeah.
suggestions
Yeah.
of the smart. Yeah, it's like how can you get something to sing more? So I think it's always important, like when people like don't kill your darlings, just change some of the words sometimes. Like you don't have to kill them. Like it could just be how it, like how people read it
Yeah.
is not how you envision it in your head, and how can you keep the same point but say it in a way that sticks more.
Yeah. Yeah. And what you described there about how your wife reads you read your notes. It's the same with my wife when she reads my books, and I'll kind of watch her when she's reading my horror novels, especially because I want to see the moments that she's scared. So like she'll be yeah, so she'll be like sitting beside me in bed reading the book, and I'm kind of like I know the chapter that she's at, and I'm kind of waiting until she gets to
Yeah,
the point because I
yeah.
think it's pretty scary. And
It's
then I
like I
just
stand at the door of my wife's office
yeah,
and kind of pace.
peeking around. And I'll see if she kind of like gasps or she stiffens or she kind of if she
Yeah,
reacts to that point.
yeah.
And I know that it's really really good if she then says she can't like sleep after it or something like that, or she's like it's kept her
Nice.
awake, and I'm like yes, that's what I wanted. I want to keep people awake at night. With the horror side of things.
That's
Um,
great.
yeah,
Yeah,
and
like initially I was just standing by my wife, kind of like an annoying, like a little pest behind her. Like, and then I was like, well, maybe I should actually look at her. Like, because it's to read it silently first was just to get her feedback, like
yeah,
afterwards, Like, and then it was like, well, maybe I should. It's like I have my hunches on what I think is good.
yeah,
Yeah, no, like the body says a lot. Yeah,
yeah. Yeah, 100%. And I think that's something that's been really really effective for me as well with promoting especially my horror stuff on like things like TikTok. So I give people free like advanced reader copies to read it, and then they can make like a video if they want to about it and share their reaction. And just hearing people say things like I couldn't sleep, or I had to
yeah,
turn the lights on, or I couldn't read it at night, or that sort of thing. That is like so powerful in terms of publicity, I think, for your
yeah,
books, because then people are like, why couldn't you sleep? Like,
yeah, yeah.
why is this keeping you awake? I need to read this book as well. And that's somebody else doing it for me. Like, I'm not saying this is the scariest book ever or whatever. Somebody else is saying it for me, and
Yeah.
then it's gaining traction because of that. So, um, yeah, I
Uh,
think
I'm
seeing it
so
feels
far
relevant.
behind the ball with like Instagram and TikTok. Like I
Uh,
should have been reaching out to like yeah, I just didn't have like with kids, book,
yeah,
parents, you know what I mean? Like it just but I
yeah,
look at Instagram and I'm like, man, I should just send 50, like I will send 50 copies out.
yeah.
I have a friend who does really well with Instagram for his books. He's written a bunch with Penguin.
Mm,
Like, and he's like, I can introduce, yeah, it's like, wait until the book's available worldwide, like now it is,
mm,
and just send copies and see. But it's smart that you're doing that. Like, just take the $10, whatever it costs per book, like, and see if you get
yeah,
somebody else talking about it.
yeah. Because I mean, you could spend that money on like ads, for instance, to people who have never really heard of you, and they might, read the book and then leave a bad review or just not enjoy it or leave
Yeah,
no
yeah,
feedback whatsoever. Or you can give a copy to somebody who is likely then to leave you a review and leave you feedback and leave you content that you can use somewhere else without having to do it yourself. For like the same amount of money.
How
Um,
do you deal with bad reviews? Like, have you gotten?
Um, I've only really got like a couple of like sort of 3-star reviews. Most stuff's been like 4 or 5. But I mean, I know more bad reviews are gonna come, at some stage. But I just kind of think, I mean, Stephen King said something about this where, if all of your reviews were positive, there'd be something kind of fishy there.
Yeah,
Or if all the reviews were bad, then you've got an absolute stinker of a book. But if it's
yeah,
like, but if it's
kind of in
somewhere
the
in
middle.
between, yeah, if somewhere in between, then it means that it's real feedback. Some people like it, some people don't, but that's okay as long as some people do. And I kind of feel that way too. Like it's not going to resonate with everybody. Some people are just not going to like it for whatever reason. And that's okay. As long as some people like it, that's enough for me. So bad reviews always kind of sting. You're always kind of like, oh man, like why couldn't they have liked it? But at the same time, you have to just kind of say, well, you know what? They're humans. They're going to react to it in a different way than other humans
Yeah.
will. and just kind of take it on the chin and move on. What about
I
you?
get just
How do you react?
I got my book with Amazon is all it's kind of like network early readers, like people who bought the book who have been following me for for a while who left nice reviews. Like it's
Mhm.
all fives on Amazon. Like, and I'm almost like I want to call a friend and be like, can you just put a three? You know, like. But for the audience, like the book is uplifting. It's for recent college grads. It's kind of it's energetic with a lot of stories and tips.
Mhm.
But I got one on Goodreads just the other day, and I didn't even know Goodreads existed. Like I need to amp that up a little. Like, and a woman like in her 60s had said something about like she didn't like it was a 3 star, and she was like it wasn't for her. She liked some of the interesting points, but it was more of a career leaning
Mhm.
book. Like, and she was looking more for like life
Mhm.
book, and like, and I was, part of me was just, like, it's not a bad review.
Mhm.
But I also thought like, well, if you read the description of the book, it's kind of it's for kind of recent college grads, people
Yeah.
who like, like not necessarily like, yeah. So I
Yeah.
think it was just the wrong audience. And also too, like with books or articles or anything, it's like if you read a book at a certain time in your life, it's different than it is 5 years later. And
Yeah.
and if people read 5 books about happiness and then they read your book about happiness, it's not going to be as like impactful as the first ones. So I
Yeah.
just kind of keep that in mind.
Yeah.
Of I had something though, my like with Business Insider, I got asked before Biden was elected president to write an article about being a leader who stutters.
Mhm.
Like, and I replied back as like, I don't. It's like I'm not a leader. Like, they're like, yeah, you are. Like, you teach this stuff. Yeah,
Yeah.
like, and that helped it. Like, it's basically chapter 9 of my book is from that article. But the first comment was like, it was me, like a guy on, like my first day as a manager, a guy refused to be on my team because of my stutter. I was stuttering pretty hard until I started writing. Like,
Okay.
I think it like helped me to figure out the things I want to say.
Mhm.
And he refused to be on my team, and it was the first day, and he said it in front of the team. Like, and I flipped out, right? And then
Mhm.
I learned like some learnings from that experience. Yeah. And the first response, the first comment on the article, like, was like, I just can't take this guy seriously. like, no, just it's like, of course,
Yeah.
Now I just kind of is like, if I'm being honest in everything I'm writing, like, it doesn't hurt my feelings.
Yeah.
I think it's more like it would hurt my feelings more if I was trying to be somebody I wasn't
Yeah.
for some reason, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
There's always going to be people who react negatively to things you say as much as there'll be people who react positively. And it's
yeah,
just nature of subjectivity with people, people are just going to interpret things certain ways, and it's just you just have to accept that.
yeah,
As much as it can sting or be annoying. Like you mentioned about the lady who gave you a 3 star review. Like I've had people who wrote about this book, which is a young
yeah,
adult
yeah.
fantasy. They've been like, I felt this was geared more towards young people. And you're like, well, it's a young adult book, and they're like, it just wasn't for me because it's for younger audience. And you're like, well, it's that kind of thing that makes you want to like trample
Yeah,
somebody,
yeah.
but but
I
it's
think people get a kick out of reading that. Like, if the people read reviews before making a
yeah.
decision, I think that could actually help you with
Yeah,
sales, like that kind of stuff.
yeah, like it's
Yeah,
funny.
yeah.
But yeah, Michael, we'll sort of come towards the end here because I don't want to keep you any longer. But um, one thing and this has been a great conversation, by the way. Thank you so much for doing this. I always ask everybody at the end of every podcast episode if they can share one piece of advice with our listeners, people who want to write for a living, so they want to generate an income from writing online or just writing in general. And what is like your one best piece of advice you could give
I,
them?
I think it's like I transitioned to full time. Like, I'm still not full time. It's like I coach. I teach at a university, and for me, like, I went full time for 2 years, and I was miserable.
Mm,
So that, and at the same point, I had 2 young kids when I started writing. I was working, um, and I did an article a week, like, and it was 700 words sometimes. It was 600 words sometimes. Like, and just like, you're allowed to move slowly.
mm,
It is kind of my biggest thing, is just because like it's easy to kind of do the quantity leads to quality.
Yeah.
But a lot of people don't have time to do, like to get somewhat quality in their quantity.
Yeah.
Like life's busy. Like, and you can go like I hired coaches when I started, like just to learn because I didn't know what I was doing.
Mm,
Like, and that helped more than me writing every day all day.
mm,
So there's different ways to get from A to B, but moving slowly and like making sure, like I look back, I don't cringe at my old stuff. And I like that I don't cringe at my old stuff. Just because like I took my time, like I said, what I wanted to say at that point in my life.
mm,
Like, and over time, my dad said something once, like I was complaining about my lack of opportunities, and he was like, the odds are high that you're going to be working for 50 years in some form or another. That means that each year represents just 2% of your career.
mm,
Like, chill out.
mm,
Like, do it the right, like, make sure that you're going in the direction you want to be going.
mm,
Nat Eliason wrote a great article about like, don't get too good at the wrong thing.
mm.
Like, that really resonated of like, go slowly. Um, Good articles. It doesn't matter if you're publishing it. Like, if it's good, like it's gonna fly either way.
Mhm.
Um, so like, yeah, take the time to get good.
Yeah, that's a great line to finish on. Take the time to get good. Yeah, Michael, I really appreciate this time. It's been really, really good to chat. Again, I feel like we could chat for a lot longer than this, but
I
I don't want to keep
I,
you.
I kind of joked about the podcast of football, but Sunday nights for an hour, like a recap of the week for
We could do that, no
would be
problem.
really fun, huh? My my kids could help.
Yeah, 100%.
They
No,
they know more than I do at this point. Yeah.
no, I could talk about football all day long, so yeah, I could definitely do that. But yeah,
But
Michael, really, really appreciate this. And yeah, I mean, love to work with you in future and different things. I mean, definitely a bit of a connection there and a shared mindset, I think, about stuff. So, we'll definitely have more conversations in the future, I think, about all this kind of stuff.
it'd be
Um,
really fun.
yeah.
You can teach me how to make money online because I'm starting back from nothing.
You can teach me how to get better at it and just refine my process and
There you go.
not rush
Yeah.
everything so much. But yeah, thanks, Michael. And yeah, I'll see you on Substack really soon. Yeah,
For sure. Thanks for having me today. It was really fun.
no problem.